The last week or so, we've talked about how we need to, as Ohioans, do two things at once. Bring back our economy, at the same time stay safe. We are Ohioans, we can do it. And I want to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to be making a couple of announcements today about things that we are opening up in the economy. How we open up, how we do it, is so very, very important. And the how is really an essential part of how successful we're going to be in doing these two things. We have asked businessmen, businesswomen, professionals to work with experts in health, people from health departments around the state, in a number of different working groups. We have two announcements today, and we have groups that met on the phone, people from all over Ohio who tried to come up with literally the best practices as we open businesses up and as we open professions back up. I know people are very excited and looking forward to this. To kind of recap, last Friday, hospitals that have been open, but they've dramatically expanded what they're doing, and it's really the time for people to get caught up through their dentists, through their doctors, through their hospitals, with past health-related issues that it's time to take care of. And so we encourage people to do that. But last Friday, May 1, was hospitals. This past Monday, May 4th, was manufacturing. It was other distribution businesses, for example. Those that were not open have now been opened. And in that case, we had a working group. Frank Sullivan headed up a working group of people from all over the state of Ohio, big businesses, small businesses, who came up with the best practices. And they're following that as these companies open, and even the ones that were already open are now following those best practices. Again, it goes back to the how we do it, how we stay safe as we restart this economy. Looking forward now, May 12th, next week, this coming Tuesday, virtually all retail will open up. And so at that point, 89% of our private economy will be back open in the state of Ohio. In each of these cases, we had groups that have done just an amazing job to come up with the best practices. And what we're trying to marry is the science and the practicality of that profession or that business. Every business is different. Every profession is different. Bringing people in who understand that, who do it every day, along with the science, we believe that we've come up with the best practices. So let's talk about today. We put a working group together to look at hair salons, to look at barbershops, day spas, nail salons. And we have today their report, which we are making public, providing the best practices as these professionals start back in. We have set the date of May 15th, week from tomorrow, and I'm sure that that's good news for a lot of people who've been looking to get back, particularly in regard to their hair. I know I've heard a lot about that. And so, again, I just want to thank the working group. We had barbers, we had hairstylists, we had people from all over the state of Ohio who helped us do this, who wrote these recommendations, who came up with the best practices. And so I'm going to, at this point, ask the chair, Deborah Penzone, and ask her if she can Skype in here. Eric, we'll see if we have her on here. and I'm going to have her give a little report about, kind of who they had on their group, and what things really they recommended, what will be really different as we look to the future as they go back in. And it looks like Eric is having trouble pulling her up. All right, I will move on then, and we'll get back to Deborah in a moment. Let me talk about restaurants and bars. I want to thank the group. Trevor Weaver headed that group up. We'll hear from her in a moment. Both of these areas, restaurants and bars, are already significantly regulated, highly regulated by the state of Ohio. The same is true in regard to hair salons, barbershops, very, very much regulated. So we start with that. In regard to the restaurants and bars, they're certainly regulated in regard to the Ohio food standards. The group that was put together included people who run restaurants, cafes, diners, everything from a very small diner in rural Ohio to a chain of restaurants. And so we had a lot of different people weighing in, coming up with the best practices. We have set the dates for them to come back, beginning for outside dining on May 15th, and inside dining on May 21. So that's May 15th, outside dining, May 21, inside dining. Can we do anybody by Skype yet? Eric. How you doing?
Hi, fine, Governor. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You want to tell us a little bit about your group and kind of who you pulled together, and kind of what will be different when customers come in, and what maybe will be different for the employees and the folks who are in charge. Just kind of tell us how this will look a little different.
Absolutely. Thank you. It was certainly my pleasure to lead this talented group. As you said, we had a wide variety of folks on the team, and we also had representatives from the health department. And it was really an amazingly collaborative effort. And I felt like the differences, while on the surface could look like they could be challenging, they actually strengthened the recommendation that we put together for you. And it was certainly, like I said, my privilege to lead them. You asked if I could share a few examples of maybe what the customers will experience as we reopen Ohio, our bars and restaurants. Let's start with space. So restaurants and bars are going to be asked to create a floor plan that it complies with current social distancing guidelines. For example, under the current mandate, there are parties of 10 or less that would be seated together, and then each party is then going to be separated by either 6 feet or a physical barrier. So rather than having a hard and fast percentage like some states are doing, our advisory board actually focused on safety, not necessarily a specific number. So what do we mean by physical barrier? That could be fine dining, for example. You could have a high booth back that's almost like a wall. Or in some locations, they're using plexiglass that's being installed to separate. So we wanted to give each owner an opportunity to comply with those constraints within their unique space. What about waiting areas? You might be asked to wait in your car for either seating or maybe food pickup, or there might be a designated area now for queuing. And we would ask customers to just comply with those guidelines and be sensitive to those guidelines. A buffet bar or a salad bar will now be served to you rather than self-service. And there'll also be some 6 feet guidelines that are placed in those queuing lines as well. Entryways, for example, customers are going to see at the entryway when they come in, there's going to be a list of COVID-19 symptoms, and we're asking the public to self-monitor and ensure compliance before they come in. Employees was also one of the areas that we tackled. And so as you're entering and experiencing these restaurants, understand that while employees will be required to wear masks in certain positions, there are exemptions that will, for the restaurant industry, mostly apply to back of house. But if you see employees not wearing masks, understand these are for safety risks. One simple example is you don't want someone standing over a hot grill wearing a mask. So just understand that these restaurants are complying, but there are some exceptions that will be listed. And you, as a customer, as a guest, you might be asked to wear a mask. That's going to be at the discretion of the owners, and we would ask that you would respect those decisions. Another thing that you might see are gloves. This is an interesting topic. I know the gloves, it kind of makes everybody feel like Superman. They can touch anything, and it gives this false sense of protection. And I know the viewing public sees that, and there's a lot of concern around it. But there are very clear guidelines in food safety code that already exist today. And we as a team are returning. Our recommendation is to return to those guidelines. In many cases, we all ask our staff, put gloves on everybody, even though we know that's not necessarily best practice. Hand washing is and will continue to be the gold standard. And therefore, our committee is recommending that we follow those guidelines. So you are likely not going to see gloves on your cashiers or on your servers. One other area, Governor, that when we talked about this idea of open congregate space. So open congregate area will remain closed during this first phase, and we'll monitor our compliance as we go through this. But you could certainly repurpose that. So if you have a dance floor or other activity space, you can use that to be able to maintain that 6-foot distance of your tables. So that's why we didn't want to put a 50% of fire code compliance in place, because you might be able to keep all of your tables because of some of this open area and still maintain social distancing guidelines. So that's an example of how you could use that space. But I know we can do this. As you said, we can do two things at once. And I know we can do this. We can focus on safety and getting our restaurants reopened. So let's work through this together. We're asking everyone to don your masks. Please be respectful of the associates. They are doing the best they can. We're Buckeyes. I know we can do this, Ohio. Thank you, Governor, and I can certainly answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, Trevor, thank you very, very much. Thanks for chairing the group. You had quite a cross-section of Ohio on there. I don't know if you want to comment about that or how that impacted it. But
Yeah, we did. It was really amazing. We had, in fact, Thursday night when I was given the list, I plotted it because I just wanted to know who the folks were that I was, being asked to lead. And I was really happy to see we had, a lot in Cleveland, Southern Ohio, Cincinnati, Dayton, Akron, and then we had some of the more rural areas, Columbus, and we had big brands, big national brands, and the public can certainly see that was a press release. So everyone that participated, you can find that press release with the full gamut of those that participated. We had fine dining, we had pizza, Italian, we had a yogurt stand, we had a tap room, quick serve, several of our national brands, family dining. So it was really a group that worked together, and then they self-identified. So we had the three groups: customers, employees, and space, and then they each got to identify which area they felt most compelled to help lead the discussion, and then it was done across teams. They worked very hard. In fact, one of our team members said it was one of the most intense projects he's ever worked on. So for all of those in the industry, I was certainly proud to lead this group. They worked very hard all weekend long to put the best recommendations forward. And Governor, we appreciated the guidance you gave us, which was you wanted to hear from us best practices, that you didn't plan to override our decisions. It was our decisions to bring forward to you those recommendations. And so we felt very empowered to do that.
thanks, Trevor. One last question. Talk to us a moment about bars. Bars present a unique challenge. Depends on how the layout of the bar is. What did you all come up with specifically in regard to bars?
Yeah, thank you for that. So, there was one consideration, and I know many states have done this. In fact, I think most did. They separated bars and restaurants, and we chose not to do that. What we wanted to focus on was the physical space and the constraints to maintain social distancing guidelines. So, for example, if you're a bar with tables and with chairs, you can follow these guidelines. So, why should you not be permitted to participate in phase one? Where and it can't be about the alcohol because restaurants are serving alcohol. So we're not making a distinction between a bar and a restaurant. What we're making a distinction on is physical space. If you have tables and chairs and can comply with these guidelines, then you can participate. Really for that open congregate area, and we understand we would have loved to have been able to include everyone in this phase one, but we needed to take it through these steps. And so that open space, if you want to put in picnic tables or folding tables, you can comply. But it really is about that physical space and being able to make sure that we can monitor and have kind of discrete floor plans. And that's just hard to do with open congregate area. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Thanks to you and to everybody on the group. We're very, very grateful for what you've done.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. We will now go to hair and look forward to seeing Debbie Penzone. Will be coming up here in just a moment. John, I don't know if you want to say, as we're waiting, if you want to go ahead, anything you want to add? Oh, you're there, okay.
We have Debbie right there.
Hey, Debbie. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You want to give us a little report, how your group worked and what you came up with?
Yeah, Governor, I was very honored to be a chair of the Personal Service Committee and serve our great state, as well as I'm a licensed cosmetologist and hairstylist for 33 years. And our group of 30 in our committee was just amazing. It was very diverse. So we had the, one operator barber to the one operator stylist. We had the booth renting salons represented, as well as salons and spas of all sizes. We also had nail salons, tanning, and massage. And then we also had the 3 health commissioners that were on each and every call with us, guiding us with their knowledge. So I was very proud of us coming together as an industry and uniting because, just like the restaurants, there's so many different mom and pop shops or franchises or big salons, small salons. But we all do the same exact service when it comes down to it, when it boils down to that personal service. And that was at the core of our, working focus of our group was really how to deliver that personal service from the client to the professional and the safest manner and be able to be so inclusive of every type of business in our industry. So I was very proud of that to work with them.
What's going to be different when someone goes in, has their hair done, goes to a barber shop? What are they going to feel different? I mean, what are they going to see differently, or what's going to be different, and what's going to be different from what the person who's serving them is doing?
Well, for the appointments, you might have to wait in your car until your appointment is ready. We'll also ask that the walk-in appointment or the appointment, that's the only person that enters into that facility, unless it is a child, of course, and the parent needs to come, or if they need a caregiver with them. And if they have a lobby or a waiting area, you're going to see the markings or social distancing there. You won't see the magazines or product testing or self-serve beverages out in the waiting areas. And, we'll be donning, our professionals will be donning the mask and really asking that the clients and customers come with their face covering or their mask, especially with our services being so personal and so close, delivering that service to that guest. And some facilities and some locations might have, it mandatory that you wear that mask or face covering when you get your service done. We'll be cleaning a lot in between each and every guest. So the sanitation right now, we are governed by the Ohio State Board of Cosmetology and Barbering Board. So we do a lot of sanitation and take a lot of classes and online education all the time. So of course, we're going to go above and beyond with that as well to keep everyone safe and make sure that we're ready for that customer.
Well, that's great. Thank you very, very much to you and for your group for doing this. We're very, very, very grateful. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks for the good report.
Thank you. We're
Thank you.
proud.
Just a few thoughts as we take a couple big steps today, or at least announce when we're going to take these steps as far as opening up the economy. This is a significant time in our journey, and just a few thoughts. One, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. We're in this for the long haul, and I think we have to get our mind set that way. I never ran a marathon, but a number of our children have. Alice and Pat, Mark, son-in-law Bill, son-in-law Nick. I may have missed somebody in the family. Anna did a half marathon, and but all our kids, all 8 kids were distance runners. And although my running career kind of ended in junior high, but in our family we're used to the long haul. We're used to the long distance. And I think really as Ohioans, we've got to think about this way. This is not something that we're going to get through. We're going to run through this quickly. That's just, much as we would like to, that's just not going to happen. Second, what we have to do these two things at once, keep us safe, get the economy back, is complicated. And what we have to do to fight back a bit against the virus is quite complex. The best practices in these businesses and these professions that we talked about today and all the other ones, that's very important. And that's important that everybody out there in business and profession follow what your peers have come up with as being the best practices so that we can ensure that our employees are safe and that we can ensure that customers are safe and that people have confidence that they can, in fact, go out. Next, there's still a lot we do not know about this virus. All you have to do is turn on the news, and watch that, listen to that, read about it. This is constantly changing what we know. We know a lot more today than we knew before when it started, but we still have a lot to learn. 4, as we open up the economy, let me just state the obvious and not shy away from it. The risk is up. The more contacts that we have, the more that we do, the more risk there is. That we can expect. We are now, we think, at about a 1-to-1 ratio, which simply means that on an average, one person who is infected with the virus in Ohio infects one other person. If we could get below that, then you start moving downward. We can expect that the opening up of this economy is going to take those numbers higher. But what we have to do is do everything in our power not to let those go very, very high. And a lot of this depends on what we do. So, what are the variables? What are the things that we're doing? Best practices for business, the best practice for professions. Men and women who've served on these groups have assured us of that. Second, testing. We've talked a lot about testing. We've not had enough testing. The testing is going up dramatically in Ohio, and it's not enough or not exactly where we want to be, but it's dramatically what it was higher than it was before. And this testing and the tracing is going to remain an integral part of what we do. And I want to give a shout out to our 113 health departments out there who are getting people more people on board, hiring people, going to utilize this testing, utilize the tracing. And the tracing, as we've talked about, is probably as old as the Middle Ages, or maybe even before. It's not anything new. It is simply an opportunity to find out who is infected, then to go after that virus and stop that virus from moving from one host to another, from one person to another. It is all voluntary. It's a process that works, but it takes execution every single day. So the health departments out there and the men and women who are doing the tracing, thank you for what you're doing. You're on the offense for us. You're going after it. That testing, that tracing is very, very, very important. We're seeking it out. We're containing it. We're isolating it. And the final thing, though, is what we all have control over, and that is ourselves. We're entering a phase now in this where it's not so much about what I say, or it's not so much about what Dr. Acton said, or the Lieutenant Governor, and it's really never been that much about us, because you all have done an absolutely amazing job. Coming here today, I looked at a new chart, interactive chart that was up, I believe, in the New York Times or the Washington Post, and it indicated, and I looked at how much distancing is occurring, and I compared Ohio to every state around us, and you all were doing better. We were doing better, not by a lot, but we were doing better than every single state around us. So as we go through this from here, it's so very, very important, so very, very important for us to continue the social distancing. It is very, very important, when possible, to wear a mask. This is going to determine, really, whether we can do this or not. This is a gamble. This is a new part of the journey. We are on a road that's never been traveled before, certainly never been traveled before in Ohio. It is a road that has danger signs on it, and we need to fully understand that. And what is the danger? The danger is that we relax. The danger is that we pull back. The danger is that we say, okay, well, things are better. We don't have to do this. We don't have to pull back with that distance. And if we relax, if we pull back, if we take things for granted, in a month, 6 weeks from now, 7 weeks from now, things are not going to go the way we want them to go. We don't want to see a spike. We don't want to see that go up dramatically. We don't want to then have to make choices about, are we going to pull back in the economy? What are we going to do? What businessmen and women have told me, and I wholeheartedly agree, they were anxious to get started, but they said, once we're started, we don't want to have to pull back. We don't have to close the business again. And so what you and I do is going to determine our ability to get the economy moving, keep it moving, to be able to go out and do the things that we will be able to do, but all the while continue to be very, very careful.